I'm going to move to the issue about taxes. Mm-hmm. You've got pressure to reduce the deficit. Mm-hmm. At the same time, you've got pressure to maintain programs that are helping people through these difficult times.
Right.
How do you reconcile that? What are you going to do? What do you tell people who we need to get out in November for this midterm election, that I can address the deficit at the same time I'm not going to throw these programs under the bus?
Well, let me start from the top and just outline where we've been and where we need to go. We came in the worst recession since the Great Depression, and we had to work quickly and actively to prevent us from going into a second depression. We've succeeded in doing that. We were losing 750,000 jobs a month. Now we've had 8 consecutive months of private sector job growth. The economy was contracting, now it's expanding. But it's not happening fast enough. And so what we've said is, look, last year, 2009, was all about making sure we didn't have a second depression. Moving forward, we've got to lay a new foundation for economic growth, because a lot of these problems were happening even before this current recession happened. We just mentioned one, education. We've got to revamp our education system, and we are doing that. We've put more money into it. But we've also said we're going to reform how the status quo works to emphasize classroom performance, emphasize giving our kids what they need, and improving our teaching core. We've said on the healthcare front, we can't have a healthcare system that leaves 30 million people uninsured at the same time as we are wasting all kinds of money in the system. And so we reformed it to make sure insurance companies are responsive, and over time we can drive down costs for businesses and families. We said that we've got to have a more effective energy policy. We've got to have infrastructure. There are a whole host of issues that can put us on the right track for economic growth. When it comes to deficits, what I say to my Republicans friends as well as my Democratic friends is it is a real problem. We've got to tackle it. But what we can't do is neglect the investments in core things like education that are going to help us grow in the long term.
So what do you say to I'm sorry.
So what I want to do is there are areas where we can eliminate some waste and not have programs affected. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are programs that are duplicative. There are programs that don't work. There are efficiencies that can be had in the defense budget. I've got my Defense Secretary, Bob Gates. He's been canceling a whole bunch of these programs that don't work and that the Army doesn't even want, but Congress keeps on funding. So there are ways that we can save some money, but the most important thing we can do for the deficit is make sure the economy is growing. And so we would be cutting off our noses to spite our face if we shortchanged some of the initiatives that we've put forward to provide K through 12 education, additional money to recruit and train effective teachers, to increase the Pell Grant program, to provide $850 million to HBCUs so that they can do a more effective job in terms of training young people for the future, to eliminate research and development dollars that will determine whether or not we're on the cutting edge of things like clean energy. Those investments we've got to keep on making. We've got to distinguish between things that would be nice to have but we don't need, and therefore we can cut, versus those things that are absolutely critical to our long-term economic growth, which we cannot sacrifice.
Let me go to housing in reference to that, because most African Americans, their wealth has been in their home. They've been hit hard. I have the statistics here. You know them better than I do.
Well, that's true for everybody, although you are right that the African American community, as usual, when there's a problem in the economy, African Americans get hardest hit.
Right.
We were more vulnerable to some of these shaky mortgages.
Right.
And one of the reasons that I've been so insistent on reforming how the mortgage industry operates is because they in particular targeted Black and Hispanic communities, where people were getting these balloon payments, no money down, and looked like a good deal. It turned out that there was no possible way that they were going to be able to pay for their homes over the long term. Home values in those communities with increased foreclosures have gone down more rapidly in many cases. And so that's a huge challenge. One of the things that we did over the last 18 months is initiate a neighborhood stabilization fund that's put $7 billion into very hard-hit communities, majority of them African-American and Hispanic communities, so that these communities, through non-for-profit groups or through the local government, can buy up foreclosed homes, fix them up, put them back on the market, in some cases as rental. But that way, you are trying to preserve home values in those areas and stabilize them generally.
We've been pushing a program called Mortgage Holiday. And you may not have heard of it, but I'm going to leave a copy of it with you. But I would hope that you would take a look at it. And it's using some of the stimulus money maybe to help offset what banks might lose, but in essence, get a mortgage holiday where people for 1 year maybe won't pay their mortgages, but tack it on at the end of 20 years. Something you could consider, something you could look at?
Well, we've got a whole host of strategies to get banks to cooperate, servicers of mortgages to cooperate with us in reducing both interest rate and principals on mortgages, to refinance mortgages effectively. We've helped hundreds of thousands of people across the country, but the scope of the problem has been so big that we've got to continually look at new ideas. So I'll be happy to take a look.
I will leave the new idea with you. Finally,